This is the book Bruce Lee, the biography by Enter the Dragon director Robert Clouse. Not liked by many, but we're going to have a look at this particular book by Robert Clouse. We notice on this page here it says disclaimer: although both unique publications and the authors of this martial arts book have taken great care to ensure the authenticity of the information and techniques contained herein, they are not responsible in whole or in part for any injury which may occur to the reader or readers by reading and or following the instructions of this publication. They also didn't guarantee the techniques and illustrations described in this book would be safe and effective in a self-defense or training situation. It is understood that there exists a potential for injury when using or demonstrating the techniques herein described within this book. It is essential that before following any of the activities, physical or otherwise, herein described, the reader or readers first should consult his or her physician or doctor for advice on whether practicing or using the techniques described in this publication, or this particular book, could cause injury, physical or otherwise. Since the physical activities described herein could be too sophisticated in nature for the reader or readers, it is essential a physician be consulted. Also, federal, state or local laws may prohibit the use or possession of weapons described herein. A thorough examination must be made of the federal, state and local laws before the reader or readers attempt to use these weapons in a self-defense situation or otherwise. Neither the unique publications nor the authors of this martial arts book guarantees the legality or the appropriateness of the techniques or weapons herein contained. James Garner and Bruce Lee in the film Marlowe. Table of contents. Foreword by Robert Clouse. His direct contact with Bruce Lee occurred between November 1972 and June 1973, when he started pre-production of the film Enter the Dragon, and through the post-production period of when Bruce Lee came to Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank, California, USA, to complete some dubbing of dialogue that had been poorly recorded in Hong Kong. Many of the people that Robert Clouse interviewed for this book he had known from that time, but many others he met for the first time during research of the elusive Bruce Lee. His perceptions of Lee were dented and bent from what he knew about him. Others were destroyed. Trying to find an accurate and objective picture of another human being is the biographer's problem. As an example, various police departments have conducted exercises that demonstrate how mixed can be the accounts of those witnessing an act that has just occurred. 6 healthy people are seated to the rear of a room where they are told a particular act is about to unfold. A door opens and a man walks in to take a chair. Suddenly a man and a woman step into the room, the man carrying a gun, which he proceeds to fire at the man in the chair. The man slumps to the floor as the man and woman run from the room, using different exits. Not especially complicated, quite clear cut. But when the eyewitnesses are questioned by the police, a vastly divergent story emerges. It was the woman who was killed. The man did not have a gun but a knife. They both left by the same door. The seated man was wearing a trench coat. No, he wasn't. He was wearing a sports jacket. Now take events that happened some years ago as witnessed by people of different cultures and different experiences, and what comes forth becomes rather contradictory, an understatement. There are individuals who have a particular axe to grind or wish to bury an episode that might prove embarrassing, or someone who feels protective of a public image, i.e. Steven Seagal being choked out by Gene LaBelle, who either peed or pooped himself. That's one example. Piecing together the portraits is imprecise, but the attempt goes on. Robert Clouse. And the usual biography of Bruce Lee, his birth, and the beginning of his rise to fame, his family. A tiny Bruce Lee is held by his mother, Grace, just months after he was born in San Francisco hospital. When Bruce was born, he was given a girl's nickname to distract the evil spirits. It's an old, ancient Chinese mystical belief, right? About demons and this and stuff. Here he is there. His usual humour. Looks like he's doing Groucho Marx. It's his parents. Here, according to Bruce Lee, it was about the only thing his father shared with him. His father had been a casual student of various martial arts styles and had shared some of his training with Bruce. According to Bruce, it was about the only thing his father had shared with him. Bruce told many friends that his father, despite his fine income, gave nothing to him. He often spoke of his miserly father, a miserly father, and would steal from him to take his friends to the cheap restaurants they preferred, and so forth. Bruce's family. Probably Robert the youngest. Probably Phoebe. His older brother Peter. Yeah, he had a moustache. Bruce and a friend. Bruce in one of his many movies. Bruce Lee as a young man. Bruce was 14 and his problems were compounding. His father knew nothing of his street life, nor that Bruce was doing so poorly in school. He did not know of the fights that Bruce was having in a daily fashion, but he agreed with his wife when she came to him with a proposal from their son. Bruce felt a need to learn skills that he could use to defend himself from the many ruffians who patrolled the dangerous streets outside their home. He told them he needed expert instructions so he might fend off bullies that he met upon leaving school each day. The Lees wondered where there might be such a school, and Bruce was ready with that answer too. He had heard a great deal about a school where a form of Kung Fu, Wing Chun, by Yip Man, was taught, and whose reputation was unassailable. The school was known to teach a style called Wing Chun. His parents agreed to stand the cost. It might be well to digress a moment and reveal something of the background of the school of martial arts called Wing Chun, though some of its history may be considered folklore. A legend persists concerning the birth of the celebrated derivative of Kung Fu fighting, Wing Chun. In about 1720, the Manchu government sent troops to destroy the monastery of Shui Lam in China and kill the Shaolin in China and kill the Buddhist monks that could be found. Only those who joined the Manchu forces were spared. The Shaolin monastery was renowned for its training of hand-to-hand combat techniques, and the Manchu government wanted it razed before it became a threat. Most of the loyal monks were either killed or burned to death along with the monastery. A few escaped, among them Mistress Ngi Mui, the only female member of the monastery. This nun went into hiding at the White Crane Monastery near a mountain called Dailung, where she meditated and practiced Shaolin Kung Fu, worried that the traitorous monks were equally as skilled in the ways of Shaolin. She needed a system that would be superior to Shaolin. It is said from her window she witnessed a fight between a fox and a crane, which featured various striking, parrying and blocking moves one might adapt to the movements of the human body. The attacks and counter-attacks of the fox and crane were so skillful and clever that Ng Mei envisioned a new fighting form. She spent many years developing Ni Mui envisioned a new fighting form. She spent many years developing and perfecting this new style. Meanwhile, another monk, Yin Yi, who had also escaped death at the monastery, had taken his young daughter and settled in a village near Dailung Mountain. To support them, he sold bean curd from a small stall. that was patronised by the Buddhist nun. And it goes on and on. Ni Mui, who immediately spirited the girl away to the White Coat Monastery of this guy, his daughter, where for 3 years she taught the girl the fighting style Ni Mui had perfected. When Ni Mui was satisfied with the girl's training, she sent her back to her father. The thug was soon aware that Yi's daughter had returned and immediately accosted her in the village square. What occurred, of course, became legend. She repulsed the man and sent him away in disgrace using a fighting style never seen before. The girl's name was Yim Wing Chun, or Wing Chun to the western ear. Yim Wing Chun soon married Lung Bok Chow, a boxer of some reputation whom she trained in the art. He passed on the secrets to a herbal physician, Lun Lan Guai, who in turn passed the skills to a swarthy actor of the Chinese opera named Wong Wa Po. The art then was turned over to Lung Ye Tai, who poled barges on the river and added staff techniques to Wing Chun. Late in life, Lung Ye Tai trained Lung Chan, a respected physician of Chopsticks Street in Fatchan. Lung Chan became so famous as a fighter that he was called Kung Fu King of Wing Chun. Many years passed before Lung Chan found anyone he could trust with his skills. His own sons, Lung Sun and Lung Bik. Others came along, continuing the line of succession, such as Wa the Wooden Man and Chen Wa Shun, the Money Changer. Wa the Money Changer was over 70 when he found his 16th and last disciple. This young man was 13 at the time. He began his training under the Money Changer, continuing until the old man died. Although this young man did not begin to teach until he was 56, he became the most illustrious Shifu of them all, Yip Man. Nearly 300 years after the nun, Ni Mui initiated the system. Yip Man taught his most famous student, Bruce Lee. When Yip Man introduced Wing Chun training to Bruce, he was completely absorbed. Yip Man said Bruce became fighting crazy. The equivalent in America are the thousands of inner city schoolboys who can be seen dribbling a basketball wherever they go on the way to school, boarding a bus or in a subway, or even sitting at a table. They live basketball the way Bruce lived his kung fu training. He embraced his new training with fanatical zeal that would last his lifetime. Interestingly, Yip Man, at a younger age, also sought out English boys to test his skills and sharpen his techniques, and so forth. When Bruce was out on the street looking for a fight, he found fault in the way a boy said hello, and no one could stare him down. He could steer holes in rocks. It was said Bruce had a natural inclination toward aggressive behaviour. His temperament was such that he had to learn how to fight or be killed. He was a small and skinny kid who pugnaciously stood his ground against everyone. He believed he could win the world by beating it into submission, and so forth. During his teen years, Bruce was much the ladies' man. He was good looking, a great dancer, and dressed in the mode of the day. His brothers speak of the many hours Bruce stood before mirrors, combing his hair, using the hairdryer and preening. Every hair had its place and learned to fit it. When he took it to his favourite place, the street, he was ready for any encounter, from a new girl to an old fight, a steel chain wrapped around his waist and hidden under his jacket. One of these new girls was a pretty teenager by the name of Amy Chan, who would later become known in Asia by her full name, Bak Yan. They seldom had enough money to pay for entertainment, and they would often go down by the railroad station where, using long bamboo poles, they would knock flowers from the magnolia and loquat trees to make bouquets. It was an innocent time for Bruce and Buck, a more quiet moment at the outset. He's a very good person with many high principles, a very nice man, a very good friend. Buck remembers he helped his friends, that is to say, when a friend needed help, you could be sure he would be there. Within his power, he would do anything for a friend. Buck had met Bruce's parents and remembers Grace, the mother, being quite westernised and open-minded, but Li Shao Lung was very antique, which is to say conservative. Buck says of Bruce, when he played like mad. Buck said being around Bruce was never dull. You were either laughing uncontrollably or shouting at him in anger. When she was alone with him, he was quiet, but if they were joined by others, he was very chauvinistic. Whatever he said must be done. Bach's father was in the film industry and arranged for Bach to test for a part at the National Film Studio, a film company that no longer exists. She got a small part that requires her to cha-cha, which she had never learned. She asked Bruce, who had been crowned cha-cha champion of Hong Kong not long before, if he would teach her. Of course he would. This was only a few months before he left for the United States, and Bach Yan did not see him for 5 years until he came back in 1964, the year he married Linda Emery in Seattle. Bach Yan in those 5 years had become a famous star in Asia and was being featured in one film after the other. When she heard that Bruce was in Hong Kong, she phoned him and told him that she had been cast in a film called San San. She explained the character in the story was a bad girl. Would Bruce teach you how to be a bad girl? Of course he would, and did for several weeks. He told Bach in 1959 that he was going to the United States and open a Mo-kun, or martial art school, but that he would never teach the Guai Lows or foreign devils any of the secrets of Chinese fighting techniques. He feared they would then bully the Chinese. As it turned out, he was the first to teach the Guai Lows those same secrets. 14 years later, Bruce would be dead and his funeral would be held in the Kowloon Funeral Parlour on Maple Street. Bach Yan, now famous, would want to attend the funeral to offer her condolences, but she could not. She knew the press reporters would be hovering close by and looking for any sign of emotion from the woman in attendance. She states, she would have cried, she said, and the reporters would see that and they would want to know why Bach Yan cries. She was married by then and she had children. They would trace back and they would make a big story out of them knowing each other. She didn't want to go through that or have her family involved, so she stayed home and cried. She still remembered July 20. Frequently a young man by the name of Shao Ki Loon, or better known in Hong Kong as Unicorn, supposedly a cousin of Bruce, not too sure on that one, would join Bach Yan and Bruce. In many ways he was closer to Bruce than any of the other boys, which made his betrayal of Bruce years later all the more disappointing. Unicorn was much like Bruce's slave, running errands, seeing to Bruce's needs, and idolising him. His career for some time ran parallel to Bruce's, getting small parts in films and working as a stuntman. This could have been Bruce's life had he not left Hong Kong for the United States and broken a pattern long followed by would-be Chinese actors. Left behind, Unicorn decided he was in no way inferior to Bruce. People in Hong Kong tell of the bitterness which grew with Bruce's successes in America, and how Unicorn felt he had been denied the chance to bloom in his own right. One of the rooftop encounters, which was supposed to be a simple sparring match between the leaders of two schools, turned into a serious fight when Bruce was bopped in the eye with an unexpected punch. Bruce stared at the young man for a few moments, a stare that would become world famous, and the boys from both schools backed away. Bruce went on the attack with a landslide of punches to drive the boy back across the white line that had been painted on the roof as a way to declare the winner. But Bruce's temper was soaring and he followed across the line to kick the boy in the face a few times and knock out a couple of teeth. When the parents of the boy saw his damaged face, they went straight to the police and lodged a complaint against Bruce. Grace Lee was obliged to appear at the police station and accept responsibility for her son's behaviour, and was then required to sign a form stating that she would see about Bruce and that they would both be accountable if any further reports were received of Bruce's fighting that woman's son. Mrs. Lee's son could well find himself in jail. Again, Bruce's father was not informed that his son was in trouble. After having been expelled from La Salle College, Bruce was being threatened with removal from St. Francis Xavier's High School, where he had gone following his life at La Salle. His impending dismissal stemmed from familiar causes: poor attitude and subpar grades. Talks about America. We're all pretty familiar with that, with all these other biographies. Bruce's skills as a dancer were known throughout Hong Kong, where he was crowned Cha-Cha champion. He even earned money as a dance teacher during his voyage from Hong Kong to America, giving away lessons or charging lessons, as he's doing here. Looks like with this European lady. Maybe. goes on about Ruby Chow. This talks about when Bruce met Taki Kimura. He was an intern in a camp during World War II, so he had low self-esteem, etc. And Bruce picked him up from that, gave him the confidence, and took him on as a student in his famed Jeet Kune Do. Became a great friend. He was very grateful. Taki Kimura was 20 years older than Bruce, but that never got in the way of lifelong friendship. Taki was Bruce's business manager, confidant and training partner. So he's practicing cha-cha here. Linda Lee, then Linda Emery. We'll never find anyone like her. It's all about Linda. Linda Emery was brought up Protestant, going for a time to Presbyterian and Baptist churches, though her family was not especially pious. She states they said grace on Thanksgiving and Christmas, Linda said, and that was about it. Bruce had no contact with any church, and when asked if he believed in God, he said, "To be perfectly frank, I do not." Bruce asked Taki Kimura what he thought about the idea of him marrying Linda. Taki Kimura said, "Bruce, you've got a gem there. You'll never find anyone like her. She's got more going for her than any girl you'll find again." Taki added later, her parents didn't have much use for him, but I don't think Bruce would have gotten as far as he got, or succeeded as much as he did without Linda. Bruce was an explosive man who barely suppressed his volcanic nature. Linda laid a cool hand on him at the proper times, turning the rolling boil to a simmer. Bruce never operated at less than a simmer. Bruce badly wanted to get away from Ruby Chow's restaurant. He felt as if he was suffocating, and his anger deepened. Every Saturday morning before the restaurant opened, Bruce would work out with the gang inside the restaurant. Ruby would stare daggers, but she never threw them out. Taki Kimura says, it seemed like everything she said kind of pushed Bruce into the ground. He wanted to get out of the restaurant in the worst way, so Taki suggested that they form a club and have the group pay him something for lessons so he could quit Ruby's. He quit and found an apartment on University Way, and the new club paid dues that went to support him. Those same Saturdays found Bruce teaching a troop of Chinese Boy Scouts in a hall in Chinatown. His love of children was a character trait that remained to the end. Bruce often taught the child children and the rudiments of Wing Chun in the back room. I wonder if she was related to Raymond Chow. Linda's mother goes mad at Linda when she finds out through an auntie that she ran off and got married to Bruce. Bruce and James had hardly set their shingle above the door of their Chulfan Kung Fu school when they were handed a scroll written in Chinese that demanded they take down their sign and stop teaching the sacred and secret Chinese fighting methods to foreigners. If he refused, the challenger, Wong Jack Man, from across the bay in San Francisco, would come over and give him a beating. The loser was to close his shop. Bruce, of course, refused to shut down what they had just begun, and the day was appointed for the fight. Wong arrived with several friends, most of them fighters. They all stood around in the small gym and declared that they came with a formal set of rules to govern the fight. There would be no kicking to the groin, jabbing to the eyes, and other sundry tactics. A long list. Bruce refused again, his anger mounting. You came here and challenged me to fight to the end with one of us going out of business. Then it's a no holds barred. There was some hesitation with this, but Wong finally bowed, as did Bruce, and the fight began. Linda remembers the fight as being all out and very rough and not especially elegant. Soon Wong's entourage tried to step in to stop it because Wong was in trouble, but James waved them off with a scowl, and the fight, brutal as it was, ran its course in about 3 minutes, long for a fight of this kind. Much damage can be inflicted in that space of time. Bruce had Wong on the floor, was delivering a fine beating and demanding that Wong surrender. All listened screaming Chinese. Wong finally indicated he would quit, and the group left without another word. The story of this fight has been talked and written about in books and many periodicals for several years, but none told of the true significance of the brawl. The fight was extremely important to Bruce because of the inordinate amount of time it took to defeat the man. He was annoyed with himself, and he knew he had to once again examine his approach to fighting in the Wing Chun manner. He took a critical view of his methods and approaches to the martial arts. In public, his view of himself was favourable to the egotistical. In private, he was a fierce self-critic. Linda thought the victory called for a celebration, but when she went to find Bruce, he was sitting on the back porch of the gym, his head in his hands. Bruce was not in the least elated with the win. In fact, he was disgusted with his performance. He had expected to win, but it was the way he won that bothered him. He knew how long it took to finish Wong and how exhausted he was at the end. His technique did not work as well against Wong as it had against others, and his analysis of the fight and his training and fight techniques came under close self-examination. Born from the fight was a new approach to Kung Fu, which Bruce would later name Jeet Kune Do. Realizing his limitations, he began to evolve his methods into the famous way of the intercepting fist, or Jeet Kune Do. His classical movements were not effective against Wong's defences or his backpedaling. Much of Wing Chun's effectiveness lies in the proximity of the opponent. The techniques are especially damaging at close range, and Kung Fu fighters will remain within striking distance. All this changed for Bruce in the Wong fight, and he decided to alter his training. He did not automatically say, I'm going to blend a number of ideas into one fighting technique and call it Jeet Kune Do. But the seed had been watered. Many years later, after the story of the Wong fight had been told and retold in print, Wong claimed his character had been defamed and he had been held up to ridicule, which caused harm to his teaching of the martial arts. He sued Linda Lee, Danny Innocento, and CFW Enterprises Incorporated for in excess of $1 million, including punitive damages. The case was argued for 2 years before finally being dismissed. Many people would be proud to say they fought and lost to Bruce Lee. Linda Lee remembered a night when she and Bruce and James were in San Francisco and found themselves in a neighborhood where Wong worked as a waiter in a Chinese restaurant. We kind of swaggered in to show ourselves. It was just like a scene from a movie. Wong was pouring tea for a customer and his eyes widened when he saw us, and he kept pouring tea until the customer's cup was running over. Bruce and James Yim Lee, trying to make more money, wrote a small training book that sold in martial arts magazines. As the organisation's secretary, Linda filled orders that came in at a good rate, which supplemented their scanty and unpredictable income. Students were still scarce and they charged those few little tuition. Bruce always had good relationships with the students. He would always have time for them. They were always welcome, even years later. He was a friend, yet he was the teacher. In many cases, martial arts instructors placed themselves on a pedestal and are unapproachable to their students. Bruce was just the reverse. He gets discovered by Jay Sebring, who would later be murdered along with Sharon Tate by the Charles Manson clan. Owned an exclusive hairstyling salon in Beverly Hills. He had a seemingly contradictory interest in the martial arts. He practiced several Oriental fighting forms, exercised and went to Southern California martial arts tournament. One fatal day he drove to Long Beach to view Ed Parker's 1964 internationals. Bruce had been invited to the Parker event and went with Linda to give an exhibition. What Jay Sebring saw astounded him, and during the tournament it was told that Ed Parker had recorded Bruce's demonstration with a 16mm camera. This kid, Bruce Lee, stuck in Sebring's mind. One of Sebring's customers was television producer William Dozier, whose credits include such series as Batman, Gunsmoke and Perry Mason. While Dozier was getting a shampooing haircut, he mentioned he was looking for a young man to play a part in a proposed series called Number One Son, about Charlie Chan. The part called for an active, young, good-looking Chinese. Sebring told Dozier his search was over. He described this phenomenal spectacle of a Chinese he had seen in Long Beach, and he told Dozier that Ed Parker had shot film of this lightning-fast apparition. Dozier could not resist the sales job and asked Sebring to have Parker call him. Parker did, and was soon on his way to Dozier's office, etc., etc. And that's when Bruce Lee's fame started from in America. Led to his fame. Bruce Lee with James Garner in the film Marlowe, playing Winslow Wong. Bruce Lee is shown in two of his major roles opposite James Garner, Top in the movie Marlowe, and as the Masked Hatter in the smash television series The Green Hornet. Bruce bragged about Linda's cooking. She can cook anything. Just you ask. You ought to try her spaghetti sauce. Just ask. He went on, and everybody was after Linda to cook a spaghetti dinner. Let's get her to make her wonderful spaghetti. The choice of beef in Hong Kong at the time was very bad, and though they had canned tomatoes, they lacked canned sauce and tomato paste. She assembled all that she could find, but then she had never cooked on a gas stove. The first thing she did was burn the tomatoes. Everything was going wrong, the spices were wrong, and then she found out that Bruce had invited all the relatives. Instead of cooking for 4, she was to serve 20. It was awful, she says, just awful. They ate and smiled and made little murmuring sounds, but I could tell that they were sorry that Bruce was stuck with her, and so forth. Bruce Lee with Grandmaster Jun Rhee of Taekwondo. Not too sure who this guy is. Could be Pat. Not too sure who this guys are. Green Hornet. Bruce pictured above on the set of Green Hornet. At far right is his friend James Yim Lee. What's this? Sterling Silverfant wrote and produced a picture called A Walk in the Spring Rain, which had Ingrid Bergman and Anthony Quinn heading the cast. The film was to be shot in Tennessee, and where Bruce was struggling, Silverfant arranged for Columbia Pictures to hire Bruce as a fight coordinator. He also wanted Bruce close at hand so he could continue his 3 times a week training routine. Sterling Silverfant said the 2 stuntmen on the picture, who were real Hollywood redneck types, wondered why he'd brought this little Chinese guy along. They had never heard of Bruce Lee, and who was this guy to teach him how to fight? Shit, we'll kick his ass, they reckon. The attitude was very wrong, so Silverfant took them aside and told them that this little guy, pound for pound, could rip lions' asses. So better not mess with him, they said. Shit. So Silverfant told them that they'd have to clear this thing up with Bruce, because they'd be working for him, and this wasn't going to help his film, so they'd better have a little demonstration. Silverfant didn't want anybody to get hurt, but he wanted to get a little respect for Bruce. So they said, anything you want, just give us a chance to show this little son of a bitch. So Silverfant told Bruce about it, and he said, yeah, gotta straighten these guys out. No problem. They went out to the swimming pool where Bruce had an airbag and chose the biggest guy first, and they had him stand about 3 feet from the edge of the pool, brace himself and hold the bag for protection. Bruce said, what I'm going to do is stand right in front of you, and with no warning, no wind up, no run, no nothing, I'm just going to kick. I'm going to hit the airbag you're holding, and you can get into any position you want to. I'll lift you from there out into the air and into the swimming pool. Shit, says the stuntman. So this guy gets in a kind of crouch, the 2 of them laughing when Bruce zapped him to catapult him nearly to the other side of the pool. He almost missed his water. The guy came up a Christian, instant baptism, but the second guy wasn't convinced. He figured he was tougher than the first guy, and it was just a lucky punch, some kind of Chinese magic. So he really gets braced. I mean, he's like a linebacker. Bruce kicked, and that son of a bitch almost missed the other side of the pool. He was up in the air and gone. Those 2 became slaves of Bruce. Bruce loved it. He loved doing things like that. Bruce had never made many friends among the martial arts teacher fraternity. He had not endeared himself with the masters and teachers in the United States, insulting their cherished positions in both their fighting techniques and the ceremony of their myriad schools. Most were slavish to the way they clung to the classical methods and centuries-old teachings. Bruce ridiculed these moribund attitudes at every turn. Now his adversaries, these masters, were not happy with heresies that were gaining their students' attention. A small collection of his thoughts on this subject included: the stances most students learn are worthless. They are just too artificial and mechanical and don't prepare a student for actual combat. A guy could get clobbered while getting into his classical methods, which Bruce considered a form of paralysis, only solidify what was once fluid. Their practitioners are merely blindly rehearsing systematic routines and stunts that will lead nowhere. And why do people want to become students? Some want to lose weight, some say they want to defend themselves, but it would say that the majority are there for one reason: vanity is exotic. They figure they'll learn Zen and meditation. That if you want something beautiful, you should take up modern dancing. What good would it do a boxer to learn to meditate? He's a fighter, not a monk. It's all too ritualistic. What was all the bowl or the bowing and posturing? That sort of oriental self-defense is like swimming on land. You can learn all the strokes, but if you're never in the water, it's nonsense. These guys never fight. They all want to break 3-inch boards or 2 bricks or something. Why? That doesn't make them fighters. And don't have a karate bout whatsoever. I think it might be useful to hold up your pants, but that's about it. 99% of oriental self-defense is baloney. If you like coloured belts, go look at Rainbow. So many instructors just want to push the same old buttons and get you to react the same old ways over and over. You are a man, not a robot. Bruce was disdainful of those who stubbornly followed a particular school or style without questioning or challenge. Famous sensei Ed Parker of Kenpo Karate said when he ridiculed people he wasn't very tactful. He didn't pull his punches at all. You don't make friends by telling people their way of doing things is full of shit. When he returned to Hong Kong, he was equally insulting to revered Chinese masters. He would spare no one when talking to the press or appearing on television. Kung Fu's ruling hierarchy rose defiantly against him. He appeared on a television talk show that included several well-known Hong Kong seafood. One of them rose, planted himself in a stance and challenged anybody to dislodge him. The other sensei approached him and pushed and shoved him, but none could move him. The seafood sneered at Bruce, waiting. He called me young upstart and all this sort of stuff. Sifu sneered at Bruce, waiting. Bruce got up and slugged the man in the face, sending him sprawling on his back. Bruce said, anybody can defend themselves if they dictate how they are to be attacked.